Begin Self-Publishing episode 140. Ben finishes his manuscript.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
So these introductions are going to get shorter because, well, you kind of know the score if you listen to the last couple of episodes. I'm talking to the same people about their self-publishing journeys. So here we meet Ben Roberts again and find out where he's got to. So now over to the interview. Hello, Ben. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Okay. So I can't remember how long ago it was that I had you on, probably 4 to 6 weeks ago, something like that. But
Yeah.
my understanding is that you've now finished your first, your manuscript, and it's off with an editor. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, that was. I slay the beast.
Yeah.
And then the beast was the beast is only going to get harder, I'm sure. But yeah, it was it was a really nice feeling actually. So I managed to get the manuscript in. I think I've already sort of looked back and gone, shoot, I could have improved that and that. I think that's something that's going to be fun to deal with, like looking back and going, oh, I should have done that, or that bit doesn't look very good, or that bit doesn't actually read right, because I've just looked back, stupidly, I've sort of looked back through, even though I haven't had the feedback from the editor yet, so I've had to try and keep myself away, but it was a huge feeling of relief actually to get that off, because I feel like it's like one of the first major milestones, because when you do the planning, yes, I wrote out sort of, each chapter was like a little win, each section was a sort of win, getting the plan actually starting right was a little win, but actually having as much of it, like 80% of probably what's going to go to print ultimately done, or 70 to 80% already done, it feels like actually that's your first proper milestone, that you're actually properly on your way now to getting it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think the advantage of a plan is just that it gives your book structure. So you don't necessarily need a plan if your book has got a natural structure, like my social media networking book, because it had 20 stories in it. That was a structure anyway. And I think with your book, because you have kind of these buzzwords as separate category, that gives you a structure over and above needing like a detailed plan as such. Can I ask you a few questions about your manuscript and also the editing process you're going to go through? So,
yeah, sure.
How roughly long is your manuscript?
So I've submitted 30,000 words,
Yeah.
but I've still got a few more case studies. That doesn't include any case studies. So I've also got case studies to put in there. So we're probably going to be looking at, with all the revisions down, probably 35k.
Okay. And as far as the editor you've hired or found to do this job, what kind of brief have you given them? I mean, are they going to be giving you like advice about how the book should be structured, or are you looking for bits where they're saying this doesn't read right, maybe rewrite this, or are you looking for more kind of like error correction as well? And what sort of brief have you given the editor, or the editor has told you they're going to give you?
Yeah, so first off, I started thinking about copy editing. So I spoke to a couple of people who were copywriters and asking how much they would charge, what sort of stuff they would do, and then So I spoke to a couple of people. Some I just couldn't afford.
Yeah.
Others, I liked what they did, but they weren't sort of specialising in sort of the type of book that I was writing. So I really wanted someone who was at least done business books or done them sort of regularly, because for me, it's important to have someone who understands a bit of the context. So I went on the Society of, Copy Editors and Proofreaders?
Yeah, Society for Editors and Proofreaders.
That's it. So I found a load of people there, and I sort of whittled them down. I found this one woman who had actually copy edited a book that I actually had read myself and I liked. So I was like, oh, that was a natural affinity. So I just basically dropped her a message saying, are you available? What would you do? And so she'd look at the structure, the wording, the flow, making sure that all the references are correct. So obviously I reference back to different sections and chapters as I go through and forward. So it's trying to make sure all that flow is correct. There's some spelling stuff, but I actually plan on getting on a proofreader as well. So after the next draft's done, I plan to go through 2 rounds of proofreading potentially. And so she could look at the structure, a lot of grammar stuff, seeing the flow, making sure that there are bits and missing things. She feels that things need to be bulked out more or trimmed down, because sometimes when you write a shed load of content, it starts sometimes in your head sounding similar, and it's trying to understand, actually, does it sound similar for someone who's never read the book before? If they're going to read it like that, am I starting to repeat myself, or could I move one of those down, or could I expand on other areas that I haven't actually gone into any depth? So that's the sort of thing that when I was chatting with her that she's hopefully going to look at, and that's hopefully the feedback that I'm going to get from it.
Okay. And have you got any idea when you're going to receive your first set of edit results back?
Yes, it should be potentially tomorrow or Thursday. Yes. So she said it would take her just over a week, she'd say. So, yeah, submitted it last week. I think it was maybe Wednesday or Thursday last week. So hopefully I think it should be the earliest of tomorrow, potentially into Thursday. So, yeah, it's going to be, it's a bit crazy. Yeah. I've had a sort of a nice week of not doing anything for my book, though. Yeah. Which is kind of nice, but then in work I had to write a blog post on the day after the manuscript, and I was banging my head against the table, and now I feel good. Now I feel like I can write again. I think it was quite tough because I was trying to write a lot of words in actually not a very long space of time, especially when I have to balance up. So one of the things we talked about in the last episode is trying to balance up everything and trying to find the right time to write, because I do loads of other things. So obviously I've got a full-time job, which obviously I'm not going to be writing in. I'm chairman of a hockey club, and I go out and play sport a lot, so I have to try and balance up. And I've got my partner as well to spend time with her as well, not completely neglect her. And as we talked about just before the start of this podcast, I've got a needy cat as well that demands attention. So trying to balance up all this stuff has actually been really tough, and it's been a lot of long nights and lack of sleep, but I think it's all going to be worth it. That's the dreaming. I keep telling myself that's what's going to be. It's going to be worth it. So I'm sure dreams will come true.
You sure this isn't just a waking dream because you had a lack of sleep?
I know. I said honestly, it was great. Honestly, in the day before I got them, I said submit the manuscript. I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning. Ooh. 2 o'clock in the morning. I went to bed for 3 hours. I got up again. Did a quick read through of different sections I was most unhappy with. Did some edits, and I got it to the copy editor at 6 in the morning.
Yeah, so, there is a point with books where you just you don't want to see it again. You just want to finish the thing. And that's the thing is, I've actually genuinely really enjoyed the writing process. I love the topic. I love what I'm trying to convey. There's a bit of apprehension that have I conveyed it in the right way that other people are going to like and enjoy and understand. But I've actually generally enjoyed the writing process overall. But it was just the time consuming. I think it's because I did stretch myself quite thin. I did push myself to write a lot of content in not a lot of time. Yeah. And obviously doing everything else, it was quite tiresome. My partner noticed that I was becoming a bit more forgetful in other things and forgetting things that I wouldn't normally forget. But for the sake of it being a short term project, actually, I mean, because really writing pretty much the entire book in 6 weeks actually is quite short term compared to potentially the long term gains and the benefits and advantages it will bring. Yeah, I mean, I've done NaNoWriMo, which is writing 50,000 words in a month. I've done that a couple of times, but I wasn't working full time at the time I did that, and I know that people who've done NaNoWriMo struggle with doing 50,000 words in a month. I mean, that's fiction as well, which in some ways can be quicker to write. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's especially with it's not just you've got a 9-to-5 job where you're working in a factory or something. You've got outside time commitments as well. Like you do lots of kind of interviews in the evenings, and you do hockey stuff, and you've got a cat and a girlfriend. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an achievement what you've done anyway. So basically, your solution for your timing problem was to basically get up early and work late on it. Is that kind of a basic summary?
Yeah, mostly work early. And one of the things I did start doing is I did 4:30 till about 7 o'clock at my desk, and then I took about half an hour off. And then I went down to Costa, and I did a bit of I did a load of writing then. So I sort of took a couple of half days off work. And then sort of did a bit of there where it's sort of change of environment, a little bit change of scene. And that helped a lot, actually, because when I sat in the same room with the same view, I couldn't really focus. It got quite tedious. Whereas actually going out, I found that I was a lot less distracted and actually worked a lot better there. So that was one of the key things that I learned since our last episode. Because I said when we talked about our last episode, I was like, I'm actually struggling to write sometimes. I'm getting up early, and I know it's the best time for me, but I can't find the right space or place, and it was actually because I was spending too long in the same place. So it was nice to mix things up. So some days I did just at my main desk. Sometimes I sat at my dining room desk. And other days I sat at Costa. And it was nice to have a sort of actually a blend of the three. And I also sat in the clubhouse of the hockey club as well. To sort of to mix things up a little bit. Just so actually it was just a bit of a different look and feel. So if I looked up, it wasn't like I was staring at the same wall again.
I know. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who give advice that works for them in terms of writing, but ultimately it's finding out what works for you. I mean, it's like when I've written I didn't do this in my latest book because it didn't actually have much writing in it. It was mainly transcription. But on the previous books, sometimes I've done 20 minutes and then I've had like my iPad with some episode of some sci-fi thing and I've watched 10 minutes of that and then I'll come back to write another 20 minutes. And I'm sure that everybody will say that's a terrible idea to do, but I found it worked quite well for me. So you're right. You have to change location, and that's what you need to do when you're writing a book.
Well, I've tried doing that. I used to love the idea of actually putting on a bit of either an episode, a film, or something in the background for like 10, 15 minutes. But the problem is, I am very tunnel visioned. So once I start something, and I will not just do 10 minutes of it because I've tried that all my life, and I'm still adamant sometimes that I can do it. I did it sometimes for this book. I'm like, I'll just put on an episode of something or other in the background, and then I've literally watched the whole episode later, and it's like, damn, that was 50 minutes I've now just really wasted when I could have. So that's once I start, especially even if it's something that I'm actually not overly interested in, I still spend more time. So I've tried to cut that down as much as possible, and actually trying to mix up some of the types of music I listen to as well, because I do work really well to sort of like musical scores, to sort of classical stuff. So there's a woman called Lindsay Sterling who basically does all this like electric violin stuff, and it's awesome. It's really cool. But I found again that over time I started becoming sort of immune to it, and it wasn't actually sort of helping me concentrate. So I mixed it up. Then I started listening to some punk rock stuff, some like stuff that like from my childhood, and it was like that actually helped me for a little bit. And then I could go back to just sort of that sort of G'd me up a little bit, kept me sort of bouncing a little bit, and then I went back to some of the classical stuff, and I actually found that, again, just mixing things up, but doing the same thing every day wasn't constructive for me, and that was something that I could only learn by doing. And I think because people do say, look, go yourself to the same space every day, that's your workspace, that's your dressing the same way, do things at the same time because that's like your work time. I tried that. That wasn't for me. I could see exactly how it would work for some people, but I think you just have to find your own path. And I guess if I did this a book a second time, I probably could write the same amount of words. Again, probably take a week or two off that time just because of the experience I've now had.
Yeah. I think it is knowing what to do. Okay, so let's talk about what else you've got going. Has the book got a title yet? I think it's always had a title, but have you got a final title for what the book's going to be called?
Well, I'm still looking at marketing buzzword to marketing authority. I have had one bit of feedback that says potentially it's too long and maybe slightly too focused on marketing, but I haven't been able to rack my brain enough or have any suggestions that are any particular better. So that's a thought. I like the title. I'm not like, oh my god, it's the best title I've ever seen in my life. So I'm not opposed to maybe adjusting it. And I don't think I'm at the stage where if I adjust it, it would matter too much. But I don't know. I am open to be swayed if a better offer comes along.
Yeah. Well, I'm terrible with titles for books. I ended up just calling my book a title, which was exactly what the Ron seal kind of exactly what he says on the tin kind of thing. So there is something. Maybe just have marketing buzzwords as the kind of check that there isn't already a book called Marketing Buzzwords. There might be.
Yeah, but the thing I did sort of think about that, but the problem is people don't want to talk about marketing buzzwords. So people want to ignore them. So if I just call it something that people don't necessarily immediately, buzzwords, I don't like buzzwords. That's obviously what I hear people's reaction is. So it's trying to so I wanted to prove something that said, actually, look, we're not just talking about buzzwords, we're actually going to turn them into something. And I was like, okay, so I'm turning marketing buzzwords into what? Okay, and it's actually how you can become an authority by using the power of buzzwords, and because it lends itself into personal branding and business branding. Okay, it's like what marketing buzzword to brand to positive brand. Now, I racked my brain. I was like, okay, this is it sums up what the book does, but maybe there is a more snappy or cool way of doing it, but I do like it because it does summarize what people will get from the book, and maybe there are too many marketings in there, but that's why I'm not completely close to the idea, and I will listen to sort of offers, because there is it sounds like it's purely marketing based when it's actually not always, because it could do buzzword to authority, but that doesn't have the same ring, I don't think, to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that you've already got your Marketing Buzzwords podcast, and there will be people who are searching for that and then discover the book if it's got the same name in it, and it's like, it's by the same guy. So there is certainly advantage to having Marketing Buzzwords somewhere in the title, if only for brand recognition as much as anything.
Well, exactly. And again, look, talking about the personal brand, it's keeping things reasonably consistent. Yeah. So people know that actually, look, it's the marketing buzzword guy, or the guy who talks about marketing buzzword, because that sort of consistency does stand for a lot. And I talk about a lot of this stuff in the book, so I'm not going to give it all away just yet, Tim.
Have you?
Not just yet.
Have you thought about cover design or anything like that?
Yes, so I'm part of a network for young entrepreneurs, and it's like a networking group called Yenna, based out of Bristol in the UK. And I like sort of keeping things within communities, and I put out on there to sort of see, because a lot of these people are startups.
Yeah. And
people of, I guess, my demographic. And so I asked a few people on there who, if they knew anyone or could do it themselves. I got a load of quotes back with some ideas, and one girl sort of blew my mind with what she took from my summary, because I sent them all the summary, and she came back with some really cool titles, covers that I could almost use without any edits, but I think we can go back and refine it and make it awesome. So yeah, she's going to be doing all the external artwork, which is really cool.
Has she done book covers before, or is she just a general designer?
She didn't. No, she hadn't done it, but that's what part of the thing that blew me away. She hadn't done book covers before, but the amount of time and detail she put in this proposal, then looking at different sizing, different options, and again, that attention to detail means a huge amount to me. And if someone wants to put that much effort into a proposal that they might not win versus some of the other proposals I had in, so she wasn't the cheapest one, she wasn't the most expensive, which was already a win in my books. But then the amount of detail she put in, I was like, so she could put that much into a proposal where she's not guaranteed the money. Imagine how much effort she's going to put in when she actually knows that she can get paid for the quality of content, quality of delivery.
Well, I mean, everybody needs to be the first time they do something at some point.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And that's why I love doing the entrepreneur startup scene, because there are some great undiscovered talent. Yes, it's cheaper, of course, because you have that less experience, but actually doesn't mean the ideas are any less valuable and the potential isn't there. So I'm doing this for the first time. So, I mean, for me, spending more probably on a cover design for somebody who's done a couple more years experience, more than it actually cost me to write the book, probably isn't the wisest thing I would have ever done.
Okay. So the next question I suppose I should ask. So we've done you're getting the book edited, which is always good. You're getting the cover sorted. I suppose the next question is about, given that you're writing a book about marketing, even though it's not totally about marketing, how are you intending to do the marketing plan for your book?
Yes, good question. And this is something that this is the time now I'm starting to think about this. So I plan on setting myself up with potentially going to a couple of conferences. So in the early new year, try and find myself some more speaking opportunities. So there's a potential that a couple are coming up around the time or just not long after book launch. So it's going through some of those. I plan on working with the people who I featured as case studies in the book to sort of get reviews of them and get some sort of video testimonials, video promotions with them involved. So I'm going to try and go to as many conferences as possible where I know they're going to be attending, so I can physically give them a copy of the book itself and get a video review. I plan on in the next couple of weeks reaching out to my wider network to find podcasts to go on that people will be interested in hearing about what the book is and where they can find a copy. So I plan on doing a big podcast outreach and sort of live videos. So yeah, I feel like February, March is going to be a big time in terms of speaking, videos, getting my name out there a little bit. I plan on trying to use a lot of the networks that I built up over here. So that's a vague plan. I plan on sort of writing it down, sort of, and getting it all finalized by the end of November. So I can, because that'll give me sort of 3 months until the book launch or so to sort of get everything sort of actioned and put a proper plan of action into place.
Yeah, there's loads of really good ideas, some of which I wish I'd put into actual my book. One thing I did notice with my book, which was very contributor based, what you might want to consider, I mean, I don't know how many people have put contributions in your book that you can tap up and how many people are in your wider network. But I suspect you might want to look at setting up an email list for like both people who are in your book to be able to send their followers to potentially, and also to keep people who are in your wider network informed. So the issue I had was I had loads of people who were very good on social media, but they all kind of like push the book at various different times. And the way that Amazon works, certainly in terms of its charts, is that it's all about spikes of sales at particular, not necessarily on one day. I think that you have to have it over like 3 or 4 days, ideally. But I was getting like some people were doing it like tweeting about it a week later, or I was like, no, I wanted you to do this last week. So
one of the things I plan on using for that is a thunderclap campaign, just as like a final bam.
Yeah,
that was something to say, just so at least everything went out within a very timely manner. And again, that was one of the ideas. It's just little things like that I've seen other people do well and do poorly, and I plan on sort of creating one of those like launch teams.
Yeah, I mean, my experience, well, I mean, I've never done a thunderclap, but everybody I've heard try to do one for a book doesn't seem to have had any success with it, mainly because it's generally based on Twitter. And you can almost end up with this echo chamber where on Twitter you see like 50 tweets all in a row from people all pushing your book on your feed, and it's like that can kind of backfire. So that's what I was suggesting. If you've got an email list that you built up over these 3 months, totally. I mean, do the thunderclap stuff as well, because it's not going to necessarily do you any damage. But if you're in control of access to the people who are interested in your book, then I think that might help.
Oh, definitely. I think that's a really neat suggestion. Yeah, I think that's definitely something I'm going to have to add in as well. I'm really lucky that Chris Strubb is doing the foreword to my book, and he's obviously released a book himself, and he's doing amazing things in the sphere himself. So having someone like that who's willing to put the time and effort to come on board with me, and the connections that he can potentially bring as well, for me, all those avenues all sort of come together. I'm hoping that it'll be a really successful launch. I've got a little bit of ground to make up, because obviously I've done the pre-order campaign, which means actually I've sucked potentially some of the initial Amazon buyers away. So I almost have to make sure that actually there's some huge advantages to crowdfunding, and there's also some big drawbacks. So I need to be able to. There's
a disadvantage that I tell everybody when they're like, oh, let's just do crowdfunding. And it's like, well, yes, but the trouble with that is that you can end up killing sales on the actual release days on Amazon, and then you don't get into the charts and you can't like feature. But from my own experience, the non-fiction charts aren't that difficult to chart in. So it's just a case of getting the sales at the right times, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the conscious things I thought about when I talked about the crowdfunding campaign. But for me, because I've not long bought a house, and all my savings, pretty much a lot of my money went into buying the house and stuff. So I really want to get this done. I felt it was the right time. If I didn't do it now, I wouldn't do it for years. So it was a case of, look, I needed that actually almost to help create the book. So like the crowdfunding funds essentially have helped pay for a good copy editor, which I could not have afforded before, and allow me to create a cover and pay for the cover design as well, which I couldn't have afforded before, which is immeasurable, because otherwise I just wouldn't have been able to get the book done. So that's part of the reason why I went down the crowdfunding campaign. And for me as well, because again, as a first-time author, I really want to validate my idea and see what support would be out there. And it blew me away for only doing a crowdfunding campaign for a month. I mean, if I'd done the crowdfunding campaign for more, which I was tempted to do, I could have earned a lot more and paid for everything. But I also wanted to keep some of that, again, not suck all the orders away from the initial sort of Amazon boom, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, something else, there were a couple of other things that you need to give some thought to. One, which I'm terrible for giving thought to, but I might have a relook at, which is the book description in Amazon and these other stores. because that makes a difference in terms of just, it's copywriting basically. So you need to be able to kind of sell the book in the book description. And the other is the keywords and categories. So the categories, especially the book's going to go in. Now, I actually tapped up somebody who runs this company called Klytics to come up with a report for me of the best keywords and categories to put my book in. Now, you don't necessarily need to go down the way of actually buying like keyword reports or using some sort of keyword tool. There's another tool called like Kindle Spy that I think does this kind of stuff. But what I would suggest is going on to like the ebook stores on Amazon and just looking to see what kind of categories are available, because and the easiest way is just to look at the highest book in the charts and what position it is in the whole Kindle store, and then like number 10 in the charts, because that will give you some idea about how competitive it is, that chart. And it's kind of good to have, and you can put your book in multiple categories. So, but you almost want a really easy category to get in one chart, and then up to ideally into the next one and the next one. I got into the really...
Like Wichita Travel.
Yeah, well, it wasn't Wichita, it's Kansas Travel, let's say. Yeah, the idea of then getting sales... I got into the top 10 of the UK social media. Well, there's about 5 social media categories in Kindle, which is ridiculous. But I got to about number 6 in the UK social media category. And I think I was number 1 in some sort of presentation and sales category, which I didn't even remember asking to be put into. There's a new release category as well in the first month of the book sales. So there's a new release chart. So there's several places you can chart, but it'd be worth just spending an afternoon or using one of these tools and just finding out like what categories potentially can I put my book into, rather than just what I did in my first couple of books is you get to the Kindle interface and then you're like, oh, I don't know, I'll just put any other rubbish in this field. I'll just put any rubbish in this field. It's worth spending the time beforehand to kind of think about these things. So the categories and the book description.
I think the book description is something I've always thought about. The categories, to be honest, I knew it was somewhat important. I know I need to find some sort of niche area. Cat, you can stay away from the microphone. Stop purring into it. He's so needy today. And I know some of the sort of those keywords stuff, and I'm quite fluent in sort of keyword analysis and stuff, and trying to work out some of those key areas. And I think as well, like, I haven't done it yet, but I know it's going to be something important, because I think if you can get a bestseller become a Amazon bestseller, it gives that a little bit of kudos, doesn't it? Even if it is in a niche category.
I know, it's ridiculous. I mean, I could say I'm Amazon number 1 bestseller, but it's just to hope people won't ask what category.
I know, every book's a bestseller, isn't it?
I know. Well, a lot of it was because there was one Udemy video I saw from this woman, I think it was a woman or some years ago. I don't think they're still doing it, but they were saying like, oh, I'll teach you how to, and I'm a number 1 Amazon bestseller, and I looked up what category it was. It was like piano tuning or something along those lines. And I was like, well, this is just like, you can sell 2 books and you'll be in number 1 Amazon bestseller.
Well, I definitely want to be an Amazon bestseller for marketing buzzwords. If I'm not, I'm going to be really, really disappointed.
Yeah, just email them and say, can you add a category just for my book? Buzzwords.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That would be nice, wouldn't it? That would be great customer service.
Yeah. So that's, we've done most of it. I mean, it's funny. I did actually, my show that I'm going out tomorrow, this is like intertemporal for the listeners, but the actual podcast episode is going out tomorrow because I was away last week. I couldn't get you in just before tomorrow's show, but I did a show with Holly Chessman, and she's in the position where she's done basically the whole book, but she didn't know about the last steps. So there's a lot of, but I thought, oh, it'd be like 10 minutes, just say go to KDP. And it was about 45 minutes. I ended up talking to her about like the very last steps about how do you go onto KDP and how do you do this. So there is a lot that you need to do in like February time or whenever you actually get round to actually the final pressing the big button and releasing your book into the world.
Yes. And that's the thing is as I said, I've slain the first big beast, but I know there's a couple of other boss levels still to come before I complete the game.
Yeah.
In a weird sort of analogy like that.
Okay. Well, I know you've got another interview after this, in your great campaign of being the pre-interview man and being hyper successful. In terms of the schedule, I think the next show I'll have with you was sometime in January. So you should be on the final stretch. But on the other hand, you should also have enough, because You're planning to go live on my birthday, aren't you? February the 18th, I think.
Yeah, I think that was what we agreed for the ebook date. I thought you were going to hold me to that, so I feel like I've got no choice. I feel like I've got no choice, Tim. But I think we said, the ebook then, and then potentially slightly later for paperback, like a week or so later. I think we said.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I did with I've done that for every book. To be fair, if you got the right software, it's not actually that terribly difficult to do them both at the same time. But maybe that's something we can talk about in January time.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to overstretch myself just yet.
Yeah. So good luck with the edits, and I shall talk to you again in January.
Thank you very much, Tim. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.